against the King Gambit. But here are the leads.
Yep, it's top 4, the second one here at the Gdańsk Regional Championships, and we've got some interesting leads. Volcarona and Basque Legion out there for Simone, whereas the Sneasler and King Gambit for Michal.
Sneasler with the Focus Sash. Not only is it running Dire Claw, but or maybe because it is running Dire Claw, it doesn't need the Grassy Seed. And no time wasted, straight into action here. No Flame Body activation. Wave Crash is going to cause a lot of damage into King Gambit.
Yes, there's a huge chunk into that King Gambit. Does take a little bit of recoil for its troubles. Volcarona, having taken that fake out, is going to be unable to move. And King Gambit able to follow ahead with the Kaltan Cleave into that Ghost-type Basque Legion and is able to get the KO.
That was such a swift turn. Both players had a good idea what they want to do against these leads. Fake out, no Flame Body activation, Wave Crash, and Counter Cleave in return to take the first knockout. Simone, this early on, down to 3 Pokemon.
I think as well this trade, though, it does enable the opportunity to bring in that Rillaboom from the back freely. You can set that grassy terrain, have the natural synergy with that Volcarona, and activate that grassy seed. That's going to give you that defense boost in the face of these Pokemon.
Yeah, but now the Dire Claw, not only for Dire Claw shenanigans, but also it's super effective against the Rillaboom. And has options to play into the Volcarona because the Poison, for example, goes a very long way against a Pokemon that wants to stay on the field for so long.
Yes, you have to contend with the fact that this is the Dire Claw Sneasler. That is something that the Rillaboom does have to worry about, as well as that Fairy Terrestrialization potentially on the Volcarona. An adaptation on Michal's side, though, we're going to see the Basque Legion join as the Sneasler just plays defensively, goes for a Wise Protect while Rillaboom is on the field, and it does have that fake out. So a fantastic opportunity for Michal to keep that Focus Sash intact for later on in the game. Volcarona, however, capitalizes on this passive turn on Michal's side and goes for that Quiver Dance.
First Quiver Dance down into the game, and it looks like Volcarona is trying to set up, making sure it outspeeds the opposing Pokemon. Because there's no unburdened boost on the Sneasler, you have a chance to outspeed it faster and might not need 3 or 4 Quiver Dances in this game.
I mean, this is dangerous, right? We've seen Simone go for this Volcarona before. You get it set up, you have that additional offensive capability with a Heat Wave, and Michal has to find a way around that.
I mean, we saw Grassy Glide dealing a lot of damage to Basque Legion and can actually take it out. So it's gonna be interesting to see if there's any Terra in play here, and we see a Terrestrialization. I think there was a combination of Dire Claw and Wave Crash or Flip Turn into the Rillaboom, but that won't come into effect because there's a Terra, Fairy, Volcarona on the field now.
Well, let's see how this Volcarona is going to navigate through this match. It's gone for its Terrestrialization. Rillaboom is able to break that Focus Sash on the Sneasler thanks to the priority Grassy Glide. And Volcarona, with the speed boost it was able to get from the Quiver Dance, can follow up with this Terra Blast going straight down into that Sneasler, and that is a knockout.
It's a knockout and a half, and Sneasler is off the field. It would have been really nice with the Poison type Dire Claw into both Rillaboom and now a Fairy type Volcarona. Flip Turn not doing a lot of damage, but allows it to reposition. Potentially, once there's a few more knockouts taken, Last Respect is going to cause a lot of problems for these Pokemon. But now, once again, Terra, Fairy, Volcarona seems to be really well positioned into this whole team.
I think it's critical to note as well that Basque Legion is Choice Scarf, so it does have that additional boost to its speed, but the Volcarona was still able to outspeed it. So even when it comes back onto the field later on, it has to be aware of that speed interaction.
Yeah, Basque Legion, unfortunately, naturally not as fast, so you need the Choice Scarf to outspeed most of the Pokemon, but if they also get a boost, it's really difficult to still outspeed them here. And now we'll see the Grassy Terrain coming into full effect, helping both Rillaboom and Volcarona. And despite taking an early knockout into that Basque Legion on Simone's side, it looks like Simone found a way back into the game, punishing that defensive Protect and going for a Quiver Dance, and now in a really commanding position.
Well, I think you made the great observation that because of this particular composition of the Sneasler, it applied a lot of offensive pressure into Simone's team because it has that Poison move and it also has that Poison touch ability. Pokemon like the Rillaboom and also the Volcarona really didn't want to have to contend with that. So a great identification on Simone's side to eliminate that threat.
Yeah, and Magma comes in great play here. Because of that Follow Me, it's really well positioned into like a Grassy Glide and Terra Fairy Terra Blast here. But he's like, oh, I don't need that. I will go straight for the offensive and double target here. Heat Wave, actually missing a target. It is the Magmar. But thanks to the Water type, Basque Legion takes that quite well. There was no Grassy Glide, critical hit, no burn, and the first Last Respects of the game.
Yep, Last Respects is going to connect down to that Rillaboom, but Rillaboom hangs on. Magma can retaliate with that Burning Jealousy to guarantee the knockout, and Rillaboom will be felled on Simone's side.
Yeah, this is what I meant. You had the pressure of Follow Me, so your opponent didn't think that Grassy Glide would have been the right play in this circumstance, but because Magma is not only so bulky and has a Follow Me option, it's also quite fast. Naturally outspeeds the Rillaboom, and the combination of Last Respects and Burning Jealousy was actually enough. And now Ninetales hits the field, and that's not a great Pokemon into Magma either. So interestingly enough, in his last game, Magma was like the end game sweeper, even though it only has Burning Jealousy. And it's now in a decent spot once again.
I think the Ninetales is going to have a difficult time for sure. It only really has the Blizzard to be able to do any damage into either of these Pokemon. One's a Fire type, one's a Water type. That's not really good odds against that Ninetales.
Yeah, but Disable could come really clutch here. I think it is running Disable, correct? And you can disable the Burning Jealousy if they go for Protect. You have the Encore pressure in the next turn. They go for Follow Me, you disable Follow Me. So that Disable Encore might come into play here a lot. There's a switch into the Kingambit, which wouldn't want to take a Heat Wave, but that might have not been the play with 2 Fire and Water types on the field. But there it is!
Oh, I mean, I was going to say, this puts a lot of pressure on the Volcarona to be able to get the damage on the board, as Alola Ninetales really can't pull through in that regard, and it needs to be able to hit those Heat Waves. At least it found its mark on the Kingambit. That's, I think, the Pokemon you really wanted to connect with, as Ninetales can still deal with this Magma and neutralize it in its own way with that Disable.
We have now seen why Disable is so strong. It prevented the Burning Jealousy in this game, and there was really no way to play around that. You kind of wanted to, like, proc the Focus Sash, or at least like get the Focus Sash out of play here, because then Basculegion comes in and in Last Respect would have taken the KO. Sacrificing on Kingambit might not be the worst play, because Last Respect now is more powerful as well.
Yes, Last Respects get more and more powerful the more Pokemon are KO'd there, and Basculegion coming in at the end can apply that pressure. Follow Me is going to try and draw in all of those attacks, though, so that Basculegion has its moment to shine. But the spread attack Heat Wave is going to be able to bypass this. It finally finds its mark on the Magma, but critically on Basculegion, gets that burn, reducing the physical offensive pressure it has. The Last Respects will come through, but thanks to that burn, it is doing minimal damage into Volcarona. Ninetales can follow up with the Blizzard. It's not going to get the KO, but the burn, thanks to that Volcarona, will be able to knock out the Basculegion.
Yeah, the burn was so crucial here, because Volcarona would have been down in the reds, potentially with a crit being taken out, but the crit instead came onto the Basculegion. Brings it
Grassy
down.
terrain, though.
Grassy terrain, and burn brings it down to 2 HP. And a Heat Wave connects it, will take out the Basculegion, and it's once again down to only Magmar. And I'm not seeing Magmar taking this game, especially with the threat of disabling the Burning Jealousy.
Exactly. Magmar's really shut down at the moment, and Volcarona just taking its time, going for the Protect. And now that Grassy Terrain has left the field as well, the burn will eventually, as a tick on that Basculegion, be able to finally get that KO.
Yeah, very safe, just double protect here. Great analysis. The burn will just take care of that Basculegion, so no reason not to double protect, and then it's going to be Magmar left. So, once again, really well played from Simone, positioning themselves with the Terra Fairy Volcarona. Such a great call into this meta game, and has performed really well in this first game.
And I have to say, I love the way that both the Volcarona and the Alola Ninetales, 2 heroes of his team throughout this tournament so far, have showcased in this top 4 Game 1 match why they have carried him this far in the tournament.
Yeah, and now Magma really, it's really difficult. You can't really attack, you only have supporting moves. You can be encored into one of those as well, and then it's only a matter of time until Volcarona will take you down. Can even go for the non-effective Terra Blast, because Magma has no offensive pressure. But we talked about this. Game 1 didn't look great for Michal, but he takes all the time he has to just think through, like, what went wrong in this first game. How can I improve? How can I adapt going into the next game?
And as you were mentioning earlier, sometimes at the end of Game 1, when you know the game is lost, you still have some precious seconds to start thinking about Game 2, because yes, you lost Game 1, but you haven't lost the set yet. So you still have the opportunity to use your information and readapt and change up the end game situation.
We have seen so many games, so many matches going into a 3-game thriller set, and both players, even those who lost the first game, still managed to come back and win 2 more sets to clinch the victory in this set. And that's why we'll see if Simone's experience. He won his first regionals in 2016. At this point, 9 years ago. He won another regional just last year, right? But this years and years of experience in the Masters category specifically might be the difference here against his opponent.
That's very true. Something that Simone can bank on is that wisdom, is that experience. Let's think about Game 2. One thing on Michal's side that I felt was a little underwhelming was that Kingambit. Do you feel like it's a good choice coming into Simone's team, or would you maybe make an adaptation?
I mean, it prevents Incineroar from easily switching in and gives Basculegion like one better way to deal with Incineroar, but like the Rillaboom was really effective. Magmar didn't help too much in the long term. It's difficult, like how do you prevent that Volcarona from sweeping through your team? I liked the Sneasler in the lead as an option, but once they had one Quiver Dance up, the combination of Grassy Glide, breaking the sash, and then a Terra Blast was just enough to take it out. So you need to preserve and get more value out of your Sneasler.
I think that's a great observation and something to watch out for. When that Volcarona sets up, that spells danger for your opponent. We're not going to see Volcarona in the leads, however. We are going to see King Gambit paired up with a Sneasler from Michal. But on Simone's side, Rillaboom and Ursaluna.
This is what I really like about these team compositions. You can vary up your leads. Even if you win with a commanding Volcarona game, you can just catch your opponent off guard. If they focus too much into Volcarona, you can be like, well, let me start defensively with a fake out yawn potential here. So there's like a lot of play, a lot of flexibility, and if your opponent like focuses too much onto one specific lead, you can mix it up.
Well, in the face of a fake out, we're going to see the Protect coming through on that King Gambit. Sneasler, however, just goes straight for the close combat into Ursaluna, puts it right down into the red, leaves it incredibly vulnerable for the next couple of turns. It is going to lower its defenses, but it does have that Focus Sash in its back pocket, so the high horsepower, reducing it down to 1 HP, is going to be able to keep it in the game. However, Ursaluna in a position where it can follow up. Oh, it goes for into that King Gambit Protect. I was wondering if maybe Sneasler would be felled in the opening turn.
Yeah, Sneasler down to its Focus Sash, now recovering some HP, but naturally very low in HP. We saw only 9 HP recovered. And it makes me wonder if after 1 Protect going to 19 HP, is that enough to potentially withstand a Grassy Glide coming into that position? Because once your Pokemon are low in HP, that Rillaboom is happily clicking Grassy Glide.
Yes, and I feel like Rillaboom could easily clean up against that Sneasler. But if you're Michal, you have the opportunity to capitalize on that and think, hey, if I've got a Pokemon like Magmar in the back, my Fire type, my bulky Pokemon, then it can easily come in, eat up that Grassy Glide, and Rillaboom kind of has a null and void turn. I think the Pokemon you got to watch out for is that Ursaluna.
Yeah, Ursaluna could go for the powerful Earth powers that we just saw going into the Protector. It could also go for a more defensive option with a Yawn. But we see a Black Glasses Kowtow Cleave going to that slot. And if that's not protecting, then at least you're trading damage and taking out the Ursaluna.
Yep, the Black Glasses boosting up those dark type moves as well as the same type attack bonus King Gambit gets does make it a formidable threat. There's the Grassy Glide that was trying to get the knockout on Sneasler, but instead is going to find its mark into the Magma. Kowtow Cleave, however, will clean up the Ursaluna, so we don't have to worry about any Yawns or any Blood Moons for the rest of this game.
That's quite a speedy King Gambit, actually. Like, depending on how trainers have opted to train both the Ursaluna, more defensive Pokemon, but also the King Gambit, not really known to be a fast Pokemon. Like, it was quite crucial that it outsped, prevented any Yawn action, and also the Earth power. Like, King Gambit's still on full HP.
I mean, this is the formidable threat that's just joined the field. The tail of the tournament so far has been Volcarona and those Quiver Dances.
Yeah, here's the thing. You didn't lead with the Volcarona, but you brought your opponent, you forced them to switch into King Gambit and Magmar. And now Volcarona is well positioned, but we saw the Taunt coming into effect, or Taunt being on the Magmar set. So if you are, and typically Magmars are quite fast, if you outspeed the Volcarona and taunt it, it at least can start setting up.
That's true. There's no fake out and play on that Rillaboom. And if you are able to get the speed advantage, you can shut down those Quiver Dances. But is that something Simone can read into? Is it an opportunity for Simone to try and capitalize on that? But first of all, Michal's going to send the Sparkles onto the stage as we see the Terrestrialization on that King Gambit. It is going to turn into a Fire type, give it a little bit of defensive support in the face of this Volcarona that does go for the Quiver Dance. No Taunt being able to get the edge to go into that Pokemon here.
So it seems to be actually faster than the Magmar here in this set. There's a Burning Jealousy, but because there was no Terra Fairy, it's not burning the Volcarona. But because it didn't go for the Terra Fairy, it is now susceptible to a very strong Kowtow Cleave going into that slot, causing a lot of damage.
Yes, taking it down into the orange there, definitely putting it into a dangerous spot. The grassy terrain helping to regain a little bit of that HP, but there was a lot to see in that particular turn. The Terrestrialization, a nice defensive play from something like a Heat Wave coming through, but then Rillaboom being able to go for that high horsepower and get some good damage on King Gambit.
Yeah, it was super effective into the Steel-type King Gambit, but also against the Terra Fire King Gambit. So it's just a very solid choice, connecting, causing a lot of damage, and giving Volcarona the option to boost here. So now if Volcarona decides to go for a more offensive approach in the next turn, maybe a higher horsepower and a Heat Wave would be enough to take out the King Gambit, even though it is resisting the Heat Waves. But keep in mind, there's also the play of going for Sucker Punches.
I think as well that Grassy Seed giving the defense boost to the Volcarona does put it in good stead against this King Gambit, because we know with the Black Glasses it can deal a significant amount of damage. One other way to neutralize dark type attacks, however, is to become a Fairy type.
And it was so nice to see that Simone was patient enough to wait one extra turn to Terra, because now if they connect the Heat Wave, and that's what we we're seeing, then high horsepower, if it also connects, is going to be enough. The critical on Magma won't decide this turn. There's a burning jealousy, not causing too much problem into Rillaboom either, and it all comes down to this high horsepower.
Yep, high horsepower connecting on the Magmar here, not able to get the KO, but definitely whittling away at Michal's Pokemon. The Kowtow Cleave going into the Fairy type, not very effective. Volcarona still very much in the driver's seat.
And we see how important, how crucial that Terra Fairy was here. It was resisting the Kowtow Cleave and allowing the Volcarona to stay on the field one extra turn, or like potentially even more turns, especially with the grassy search or grassy terrain recovery here. Rillaboom in a great slot. We saw the Heatwave crit into Magmar combined with the high horsepower. I think there was a protect into the King Gambit.
Well, Magmar going defensive here, just taking a protect. Does not want to have to be KO'd in this particular turn. King Gambit trying desperately to get the Sucker Punch to get the knockout, but it's not to be thanks to that Fairy Terror type. The Heat Wave will not be connecting into Magmar this time. No potential to get a critical hit there, but on the King Gambit, still not enough. That Terrestrialization helping out, so Rillaboom has to seal the deal and go for that damage to be able to get the knockout.
And Michal loses his Terra Pokemon, his Terra Fire King Gambit here. Sneasler might come back into the game here while Magmar is still on the field. And we'll see Volcarona so low in HP. I feel like if you get any decent move, maybe not the Burning Jealousy because of the boost, any other move I feel like might be enough. Even an Aqua Jet could be enough here to take it out. And since Grassy Terrain is over, you don't have priority on your Grassy Glides anymore. So Basque Legion is a little bit safe. It could even go potentially for a flip turn KO there as well, and make sure that it doesn't have to take a Wood Hammer. But of course, you also have the Follow Me support.
Yeah, Follow Me to help redirect those attacks, but I think you're right that the speed that Michal's able to utilize with something like the Basque Legion could be really nice, but we saw in the previous game, I believe at +1, Volcarona does outspeed. So if you're Basque Legion to get that edge, you might have to go for... it doesn't even have the priority Aqua Jet, so yeah, Flip Turn might be its only choice to reset that board state.
Yeah, Rillaboom is switching out. This might be an indication that Simone is going for a more defensive approach, might protect the Volcarona here, and then get Rillaboom back in eventually with some fake-out support and Grassy Terrain recovery. That's exactly what we've seen from Simone's end.
Yeah, perfectly called there. The Protect coming through on the Volcarona, keeping it in the game as the adaptation comes through from Simone, switches out that Rillaboom and brings the Ninetales to play. Magmar trying to draw any potential attacks that we know are not coming in this particular turn, and poor Basque Legion not able to find its mark with those last respects either.
Also, a really dangerous play here is the disable into a Scarf Pokemon. It depends on which move it's going for, but we saw the last respect. And if you can sacrifice the Volcarona, but if you take out the Magmar and disable the Basque Legion, then that's a big play. But there's a Heat Wave miss.
Misses the Basque Legion, no potential chance for a burn here, and Magmar is still going to be able to hold on. Basque Legion with that Choice Scarf can go for the last respects. Ninetales in position to go for a disable, but no, instead goes for the Blizzard, manages to get the KO on the Magmar and chip away at this Basque Legion.
Yeah, the last respect into Volcarona would have been great, but we see the stash being broken on the Ninetales, and this is going to be a really, really close endgame here. Sneasler hits the field, but it's down to 10 HP. Doesn't have any further recovery. Volcarona, the fastest Pokemon now. First question would be, Terra Blast, is that enough to take out the Basque Legion? Is Heatwave connecting to both Pokemon? You have the fake out play, so naturally you would expect Simone to just play it safe and go for a double protect.
That's the thing, you do have the fake out, and you know, Volcarona in the red, it could maybe even get a knockout there, but Volcarona could easily protect like you said. But at the same time, Michal can read into that and go, okay, I can go with last respects into my Alolan Ninetales, for example.
And this is the position you want to play yourself into. Endgame, you're up one Pokemon, you still have a Rillaboom in the back. Both your opponent's Pokemon in danger here. We see the protect from the Volcarona, very likely another protect from the Ninetales to just outplay that fake out potential.
That's fair. You don't know where the fake out's going to go. You might as well just go for the double protect and just remove that option for Michal's side, because you can't use fake out after that first turn.
So now you could go for a Heat Wave, but also the Sneasler could just protect. You could fish for a burn, but that's not really what I want to do. So I feel like it really comes down if Terra Blast is enough to take out the Basque Legion. If it isn't, then maybe a last respect into the Ninetales and the Dire Claw into Volcarona would be enough to take 2 knockouts and then position yourself really well against the opposing Rillaboom. But also Rillaboom has the priority moves, has the tank ability, so to say, to take hits as well. So maybe 2 Grassy Glides would be enough to go for the endgame. We see the protect, and I think it's going to come down to the Terra Blast option here.
Yep, Sneasler going for the Protect. Volcarona, however, has that option to go for the Terra Blast, but it was going into the Sneasler. Basque Legion gets away scot-free here in prime position to go for that last respects, and it finds its mark down on that Ninetales.
Oh, I'm not sure. Like, keeping Volcarona on the field just puts so much more pressure on the team, because now Rillaboom comes back in, has the priority, Grassy Glide, Grassy Surge, is setting the grassy terrain again. And I think Simone put himself into really good position for this endgame here, and I would have loved to see Volcarona being taken out. It's still a difficult position afterwards against the Rillaboom, but the speed advantage of Volcarona is just so difficult to play around.
And you now have to contend with the fake out on the field for that Rillaboom, with your Sneasler having just protected, so it's not going to be able to safely go for another one. You can see the double protect has indeed failed, but Rillaboom wasn't even going for it. The Grassy Glide into Basque Legion is going to clean up, and now all eyes on the star of the show, the Volcarona, to clean up this top 4 game for Simone.
One last attack, and is the Terra Blast. Terra Fairy, Terra Blast taking out the very low Sneasler, and Simone Sanvito is your finalist here in Gdańsk.
What a match. Simone advances to our grand finals to face down against Tier Team Masu. What a fantastic finals we have got ahead of us.